Welcome to Myths and Moonlight, where stories become journeys and journeys become dreams. I'm Aaron, your guide for tonight, inviting you to leave the ordinary world behind as we venture into realms of wonder and tranquility. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with us as we explore the extraordinary together. Tonight, I find myself reflecting on the nature of discovery, how the most profound revelations often come when we're willing to venture beyond our familiar boundaries. In my own life, I found that moments of true clarity arrived not when I was frantically searching, but when I allowed myself to be still enough to notice what was already present. The journey I'll share with you tonight invites you into a world where time flows differently, where ancient wisdom resides in unexpected forms, and where the boundaries between what we know and what we have yet to discover become beautifully blurred. We'll traverse landscapes of crystalline beauty, encounter beings who have witnessed the turning of countless seasons, and perhaps discover hidden passages to new understandings within ourselves. This story speaks to something we all carry within, that quiet curiosity about what lies beyond our immediate perception, the sense that there are deeper connections waiting to be discovered. It reminds us that sometimes what appears as an ending may simply be a threshold to something new, something wonderful. As we begin, I invite you to make yourself completely comfortable. Adjust your position if needed, perhaps pulling your blankets a little closer around you, ensuring that your body is fully supported. This time is entirely yours, a gift of rest and gentle exploration that you've chosen to give yourself. Let's begin by creating the perfect conditions for you to drift into this story, allowing your mind and body to prepare for a journey of peaceful discovery and deep restorative rest. Take a moment now to settle more deeply into your space. Perhaps you're already lying down, your head against your pillow, your body supported on your mattress. Or maybe you're still finding that perfect position. Wherever you are, however you're positioned, allow yourself to become a little more comfortable with each passing breath. All of us carry the weight of our days, the conversations we've had, the tasks we've completed, the thoughts we've entertained. Like footprints in snow, these experiences leave their impressions upon us. And just as snow gradually smooths and softens under the gentle touch of time, you too can allow the impressions of your day to soften and ease. Let's begin by bringing awareness to your body, noticing how it feels to be exactly where you are. Starting with your feet, bring your attention to your toes, allowing them to soften and relax. You might wiggle them gently and then let them become still, heavy, warm. This relaxation begins to flow upward like a gentle warming current, moving into your feet, relaxing the arches, the heels, the tops of your feet. This soothing wave continues to rise, flowing into your ankles now, easing any tension there, and then up into your calves. Feel how your legs become heavier, more relaxed, sinking more deeply into your mattress or cushion. The muscles of your calves softening, unwinding, releasing. This relaxation continues its gentle journey upward, flowing now into your knees, easing any holding or tension there, and then into your thighs, those strong muscles that carry you through your day, now being given permission to completely rest. Feel how your legs become even heavier, warm, comfortable, deeply at ease. The relaxation rises further, flowing into your hips and lower back, areas that often hold so much tension throughout our day. As you breathe, imagine this area softening, widening, releasing. Any discomfort melting away with each breath out. And now, this wave of comfort rises into your abdomen and lower back. With each breath, feel your belly rise and fall in a natural, easy rhythm. Your breathing becomes deeper, slower, more comfortable. With each inhale, your abdomen gently expands. With each exhale, it softly falls. This natural rhythm bringing more and more relaxation into your body. This soothing current continues to rise, flowing now into your chest and upper back. Feel your ribcage gently expanding with each breath in and softly falling with each breath out. Your heartbeat steady and calm. Your chest relaxed and open. The relaxation flows into your shoulders now. Those places that so often carry the weight of our responsibilities. Feel them becoming heavy, dropping down away from your ears. Any tightness or tension dissolving, melting, releasing. Your shoulders becoming soft, rounded, completely at ease. This wave continues down your arms, flowing into your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms. The muscles becoming soft and loose, heavy and warm. And then into your wrists, your hands, and finally your fingers. Your hands might feel slightly warm, slightly tingly, completely relaxed. And finally, this soothing wave of relaxation rises into your neck, easing any tension there, allowing your head to be perfectly supported. The relaxation flows into your scalp, your forehead becoming smooth and broad, your eyebrows softening, your eyes resting easily behind your eyelids, your cheeks become soft, your jaw relaxing. Perhaps your lips slightly parting as all tension leaves your face. Your tongue rests easily in your mouth, and even your ears soften. Your entire head feeling heavy, comfortable, completely at ease. Now, your entire body is enveloped in this deep relaxation. From the top of your head to the tips of your toes, you are cocooned in comfort, wrapped in warmth, held in perfect peace. As your body settles into this state of deep relaxation, bring your awareness to your breath. There's no need to control or change your breathing in any way. Simply notice the natural rhythm of your breath, flowing in and flowing out. Notice how your breath naturally fills your lungs, how your chest and abdomen gently rise with each inhale, and how they softly fall with each exhale. This ancient rhythm has been with you since your very first moment, and it will carry you throughout this entire journey. Trustworthy, reliable, constant. With each inhale, you might imagine drawing in peaceful energy, filling your body with calm, with ease. And with each exhale, you might imagine releasing anything you no longer need. Any remaining tension, any lingering thoughts about your day, any worries about tomorrow. Inhaling peace, exhaling tension. Inhaling calm, exhaling worry, inhaling comfort, exhaling any remaining tightness. Your breath becomes a gentle bridge, carrying you from your everyday awareness into a state of deepening relaxation. With each cycle of breath, you drift a little deeper, become a little more at ease, a little more prepared for our journey together. As you continue to breathe naturally and easily, begin to imagine yourself in a space of perfect tranquility, a place where the air itself seems to shimmer with quiet magic. Around you extends a vast landscape of pristine ice and snow. But rather than feeling cold, you are perfectly warm, perfectly comfortable. The horizon stretches out in all directions, an endless canvas of whites and blues and soft purples. Crystalline formations rise from the landscape, catching the light of a gentle sun that hangs low in a pearl-colored sky. These ice structures refract the sunlight, sending soft prisms of color dancing across the snow. Pale pinks, gentle blues, soft golds. The snow beneath you is not hard or cold, but rather like a cushion of the softest down, supporting you perfectly, cradling you in comfort. The surface has a gentle give to it, molding to your form, creating a space that feels made just for you. The air is still, serene, holding a pleasant crispness that feels refreshing to breathe. Each breath fills your lungs with this pristine air, carrying with it a subtle sweetness, like the scent of distant flowering plants that somehow thrive in this crystalline world. As you settle more deeply into this landscape, you become aware of the subtle sounds that fill this seemingly quiet place. There's a delicate chiming, like tiny crystal bells being stirred by an unfelt breeze. The ice structures around you occasionally shift or settle, creating gentle musical tones that hang in the air like visible notes. In the far distance, perhaps you can hear the soft rumble of ice shifting, a deep, resonant sound that feels more comforting than alarming. It speaks to the living nature of this iceland, how it's constantly, slowly transforming itself, renewing itself, all in a timescale far beyond human perception. The snow beneath you creates a gentle cushioning for your body, perfectly contouring to support every curve and angle. You feel weightless yet completely held, effortlessly suspended in perfect comfort. Any places in your body that might have been holding tension now release completely into this supportive embrace. You're aware of a pleasant warmth flowing through you despite the icy landscape. It's as though you're wrapped in an invisible cocoon of perfect temperature. Not too warm, not too cool, but exactly right. This warmth seems to pulse gently with your heartbeat, radiating outward from your center to your limbs, all the way to your fingertips and toes. The air carries subtle scents that surprise and delight you. There's a crisp, clean quality that reminds you of fresh linens dried in winter sunlight. Underneath that, perhaps a hint of aromatic herbs, lavender, chamomile, mint, their essence somehow preserved in the crystalline structures around you. And something else, a sweet, almost honeyed note that you can't quite identify, but that brings a sense of comfort, of home, of belonging. These scents mingle and dance around you, sometimes one becoming more prominent, then fading back as another emerges, a constantly shifting symphony for your senses. As you breathe this sweetly scented air, you might even detect a slight taste on your tongue, perhaps reminiscent of sipping clear spring water with just a hint of natural minerals, or the subtle sweetness of fresh snow caught on your tongue during childhood winters. In this moment, in this place, there is a profound recognition that begins to emerge. The beauty surrounding you isn't something separate from yourself. There is a deep connection between the crystalline structures of this landscape and something fundamental within you. Just as these ice formations reflect and refract light in miraculous patterns, so too do our lives reflect and refract our experiences, creating unique patterns of understanding. This magical Iceland, with its quiet beauty and gentle power, reminds us that some of the most profound changes happen slowly, almost imperceptibly, yet with unstoppable momentum. The forming of ice, the shaping of snow by wind, the gradual carving of new paths. Nature operates without hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Perhaps we can learn from this gentle power, allowing our own transformations to unfold at their natural pace, trusting in the process, finding beauty in each stage, rather than rushing towards some imagined destination. As you lie here, perfectly comfortable in this crystalline world, know that you are exactly where you need to be. You have permission to completely let go, to surrender to this experience, to allow yourself to be held in perfect peace. Every breath you take confirms your right to rest, to rejuvenate, to simply be. You have permission to set aside all responsibilities for this time, all worries, all planning. Nothing requires your attention right now, except this journey we're taking together. You are allowed to give yourself completely to this experience of rest and gentle exploration. This is your time, a gift you've given yourself. And now, as you lie here, completely relaxed, perfectly at ease, I invite you to join me as our story truly begins. A journey into the magical Icelands and the mysteries they hold. In the furthest reaches of the northern lands, where the edges of maps fade into uncertainty and the stars wheel close to the earth, there existed a realm unlike any other. The locals called it Crystalia, the Icelands. Though few ventured far into its interior, those who did spoke of wonders beyond description, of lights that danced in crystalline towers, of strange magics preserved in the ancient ice. It was here, nestled between towering glaciers and fields of snow, that gleamed with an inner light, that Aldrin the Wizard had made his home for more years than anyone could count. His true age remained a mystery, even to those rare visitors he occasionally welcomed. His beard was indeed long and white, but it had been thus even in the earliest tales told of him. His eyes were the deep blue of glacial ice, holding within them a clarity and depth that spoke of centuries of observation. Aldrin stood at the window of his tower, which, unlike the dark, foreboding structures of storybook wizards, was crafted entirely of ice that somehow never melted. The walls were translucent, allowing gentle light to filter through, creating an interior that shifted from pale blue to soft lavender as the sun moved across the sky. Rather than feeling cold, the interior maintained a perfect temperature, cool enough to feel refreshing, warm enough to be comfortable without heavy clothing. The wizard's appearance matched his surroundings, robes of a fabric that seemed woven from frost itself, shifting and shimmering as he moved. Up close, one could see intricate patterns in the material, like snowflakes preserved in fine silk. His hair and beard weren't simply white, but contained subtle highlights of blue and silver that caught the light as he turned his head. He moved with a deliberate slowness that suggested not age, but rather a conscious choice to experience each moment fully. His hands, though bearing the marks of great age, were steady and strong, fingers long and elegant as they traced patterns in the condensation on the window glass. From this vantage point, Aldrin could see for miles across the pristine landscape of Crystalia. Vast plains of untouched snow stretched to the horizon, interrupted only by magnificent ice formations that rose like natural sculptures, some as tall as mountains. These weren't merely frozen water, but complex structures that had been forming for millennia, layer upon layer of ice imbued with these subtle magics that permeated this realm. The sun hung low in the sky, as it always did in Crystalia, neither fully rising nor completely setting. but casting a perpetual golden blue twilight. This unchanging light had a curious effect on one's sense of time. Days could pass like moments, or a single hour might stretch into what felt like days. Aldrin had long ago stopped measuring time by the movement of the sun, instead attuning himself to the more subtle rhythms of the ice itself. In the distance, a herd of frost elk moved gracefully across the snow, their crystalline antlers catching the light. These magnificent creatures, with their translucent white fur and gentle blue eyes, were among Aldrin's favorite denizens of the Icelands. They left no footprints as they moved, seeming to glide just above the surface of the snow, their passage marked only by a slight shimmer in the air behind them. Closer to the tower, small ice foxes played among the snowdrifts, their coats changing color with their movements, from white to pale blue to silver and back again. Their yips and calls carried clearly in the still air, a sound like tiny bells that brought a smile to the old wizard's face. Aldrin took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the crisp, sweet air of Crystalia. The air here held properties found nowhere else. Each breath felt purifying, revitalizing, as though the very essence of clarity and peace was being drawn into the body. Many who had experienced it claimed that breathing the air of the Icelands for even a day could heal ailments that had persisted for years. As the wizard exhaled, his breath formed not the expected cloud of vapor, but rather a swirl of tiny, glittering crystals that danced momentarily before him, catching the light before dissolving back into the air. This small magic happened with every breath in Crystalia, a constant reminder of the special nature of this place. Aldrin turned from the window and surveyed his circular chamber. Unlike the cluttered workspaces of many wizards, his quarters were arranged with mindful simplicity. A large desk of polished ice stood centered before another window, its surface holding only a few carefully placed items. An ancient book bound in pale leather, a quill that appeared to be made from the feather of some unknown iridescent bird, and a small crystal globe that contained what looked like a miniature aurora, colors shifting and dancing within its confines. Bookshelves lined portions of the walls, though with surprising gaps between volumes, giving each book room to breathe. These weren't crammed shelves of a scholar desperate to display knowledge, but the curated collection of someone who had long ago discerned what was truly worth preserving. The books themselves were diverse, some clearly ancient with bindings of materials not seen in the known world for centuries, others surprisingly modern, perhaps brought by the occasional travelers who sought Aldrin's wisdom. A simple bed stood against one wall, covered with blankets woven from a silvery material that looked like captured moonlight. Beside it, a small table held a cup made from a single piece of flawless ice, perpetually filled with a steaming liquid that smelled of herbs and honey. In the center of the room was a circular area left empty of all furniture, the floor there inlaid with a mosaic of different colored ice, forming an intricate pattern of interconnected spirals. This was Aldrin's meditation space, where he spent hours each day in silent communion with the essence of Crystalia itself. Despite having lived in this tower for longer than most civilizations had existed, Aldrin carried himself with the fresh curiosity of someone who had just arrived. Each morning brought new observations, new subtle shifts in the ice, new patterns of light filtering through the walls that never failed to capture his attention and wonder. This morning, however, there was something different in his contemplation. a subtle tension in his posture, a slightly more focused quality to his gaze as it swept across the landscape. Something was changing in Crystalia, something significant. Aldrin had felt the first tremors of it several days ago, a barely perceptible shift in the deep magics that held this realm in balance. He returned to his desk and gently placed his hand on the crystal globe. The colors within swirled more rapidly at his touch, the blues and greens giving way to purples and golds. This was no mere ornament, but a sophisticated magical instrument that allowed him to sense the currents of power flowing through the icelands. The patterns it was showing now confirmed his suspicions. A new current was forming, a possibility that hadn't existed before. After so many centuries of relative constancy, change was coming to Crystalia, and Aldrin, despite all his years and wisdom, felt a flutter of what could only be described as excitement in his chest. For while change could bring challenge, even danger, it also brought opportunity, growth, and discovery. The wizard moved to the center of the room, carefully positioning himself in the exact center of the spiral pattern on the floor. He closed his eyes, straightened his spine, and placed his palms together before his heart. Then, with practiced ease, he slowed his breathing, each inhale and exhale becoming longer, deeper, more intentional. As he settled into this meditative state, the spiral pattern beneath him began to glow softly, a gentle blue light that slowly spread outward from his feet, following the complex paths of the design until the entire floor seemed illuminated from within. The light pulsed gently in rhythm with his breath, creating a harmonious connection between the wizard and his environment. This was how Aldrin began each day, in silent communion with Crystalia itself. Through this practice, he had learned the language of the ice, the whispers of the snow, the deep, resonant tones of the glaciers. It was a language without words, a communication of pure sensation, and knowing that had taken him centuries to fully comprehend. Today, the message coming through this connection was clear, if mysterious. Something ancient was awakening deep within the ice. Something that had laid dormant for millennia was stirring. Aldrin could feel it like a distant heartbeat, slow but strengthening, sending ripples through the magical currents of the realm. After an hour of this deep meditation, the wizard opened his eyes, the glow of the floor pattern slowly fading back to its dormant state. He rose with fluid grace that belied his apparent age and moved to a small alcove where he kept his simple provisions. Aldrin's daily sustenance consisted primarily of foods unique to Crystalia, crystal berries that grew on bushes sprouting directly from the ice, snow honey collected from the hives of frost bees, and a special bread made from a grain that flourished in the cold. These foods, like everything in the Icelands, contained subtle enchantments, nourishing not just the body but also the spirit, keeping the wizard's energies balanced and his connection to the realm strong. As he prepared his morning meal, arranging the berries in a perfect spiral pattern on a plate of thin ice, Aldrin contemplated the day ahead. The changing currents he had sensed would require investigation. He would need to venture away from his tower, perhaps journey to the Whispering Glacier in the east, where the oldest magics of Crystalia were said to originate. The wizard ate, mindfully savoring each berry as though it was the first time he had tasted its unique sweetness. The crystal berries burst with flavor that changed subtly as one ate them, beginning with a bright, almost citrus note, then evolving into something more complex, reminiscent of vanilla and cinnamon, before finishing with a cooling sensation like mint. Each one contained a perfect balance of sweetness and tartness, providing both pleasure and nourishment. As he finished his meal, Aldrin heard a familiar sound outside his tower, the soft chiming of crystal bells. He smiled, knowing exactly what this heralded. Moving back to the window, he looked down to see a small procession approaching his tower. The ice sprites of Crystalia were among its most curious inhabitants. Small, translucent beings, about the height of a human child, but with proportions more like those of dragonflies. Their bodies appeared to be formed from the purest ice, though they were warm to the touch and perfectly flexible. Delicate wings that looked like intricate frost patterns adorned their backs, seemingly too fragile to support flight, yet allowing them to soar with incredible grace. Small bells of ice hung from their clothing, creating the distinctive chiming that announced their presence. This particular group, led by a sprite named Lumeria, visited Aldrin regularly, bringing news from the furthest reaches of Crystalia. The sprites could travel faster than any other beings in the realm, their light bodies allowing them to be carried vast distances on the gentlest of breezes. Aldrin made his way down the spiral staircase that wound through the interior of his tower. Unlike conventional stairs, these were formed from a continuous slope of ice, with a slightly textured surface that prevented slipping. The walls of the stairwell contained small niches where various magical instruments and curiosities were displayed. A compass whose needle changed color rather than direction. A timepiece where the sand flowed upward rather than down. A mirror that showed not one's reflection, but the view from the other side of the realm. Reaching the base of the tower, Aldrin opened the door, which, despite being made entirely of ice, swung open as smoothly and silently as if crafted from the finest wood and fitted with perfect hinges. The wizard had stepped out onto the threshold and raised his hand in greeting to the approaching sprites. "Lumeria," he called, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. "You and your kin are always welcome. What news do you bring from the far reaches?" The lead sprite, distinguished from her companions by the slightly bluer tint to her form and the intricate patterns etched into her ice-like skin, glided forward. Unlike many magical creatures of legend, the sprites didn't speak in riddles or obscure pronouncements. Lumeria's voice was clear and melodious, like water flowing over crystal. "Greetings, Aldrin of the Tower," she replied, performing a graceful mid-air bow. "We bring tidings from the eastern reach. The Whispering Glacier has been singing more loudly these past nights. The songs are different, older patterns we haven't heard in many cycles." The other sprites nodded in agreement, their bells creating a harmonic chiming that seemed to emphasize the point. Among them was Frostling, known for his exceptional hearing, who added, "There are words in the ice songs now, ancient wizard. Not just tones, but actual words in the old tongue." Aldrin's eyebrows rose slightly at this information, confirming what he had sensed during his meditation. The Whispering Glacier was one of the oldest features of Crystalia, a massive formation of primordial ice that had existed since the realm's creation. It was known to emit tones as wind passed through its many crevices and tunnels, creating natural music that changed with the seasons. But words, articulate speech, that was unprecedented. And there is more, Luminara continued, her expression growing serious. The aurora veil has been descending lower than we have ever seen. Last night, it nearly touched the surface of the snow sea. Some of the younger frost elks walked right through it. They emerged unchanged, but their antlers glowed with new patterns for hours afterward. The aurora veil was another of Crystalia's wonders, a curtain of shifting colored light that usually danced high in the sky. It was generally understood to be a boundary of sorts, separating the icelands from something else. What lay beyond was a matter of speculation, even among the oldest denizens of the realm. Aldrin stroked his beard thoughtfully, the silver highlights in it catching the light. These signs all point to a significant shift in the fundamental energies of Crystalia, he said, more to himself than to the sprites. Then, looking directly at Luminara, he added, "Would you and your kin be willing to guide me to the Whispering Glacier? I believe I need to hear these new songs for myself." The sprites exchanged excited glances, their wings beating a little faster in anticipation. Serving as guides to the ancient wizard was considered a great honor among their kind. "We would be delighted," Luminara answered for the group. "When do you wish to depart?" "Let us leave within the hour," Aldrin decided. "The changes I'm sensing are accelerating. It would be best not to delay." With that settled, the wizard invited the sprites inside to rest while he prepared for the journey. As magical as Crystalia was, travel through its vast expanses still required preparation. The distances were great, and while the realm wasn't hostile, it could be unpredictable, especially during times of change. Back inside his tower, Aldrin moved with purposeful efficiency, gathering what he would need from a cabinet of frosted glass. He selected several crystal vials containing essences he had distilled from various elements of Crystalia. Starlight captured during rare, clear nights. The song of the ice foxes preserved in liquid form. The essence of calm extracted from the center of perfect snowflakes. These were not merely sentimental keepsakes, but powerful magical tools that could influence the environment or provide protection if needed. Into a satchel woven from silver thread, a material harvested from the webs of ice spiders, he placed these vials, along with some provisions for the journey. While he could sustain himself for long periods on the ambient energy of Crystalia, having tangible nourishment was both practically wise and a comfort he allowed himself. The last item he selected was a staff that stood in a corner of the room. Unlike the gnarled wooden staffs often associated with wizards, this was a straight, slender rod of what appeared to be solid diamond. It stood exactly as tall as Aldrin himself, and was cool to the touch but not cold. Small runes were visible deep within its structure, shifting positions subtly when not directly observed. This was Frost Fathom, an artifact as old as Aldrin's presence in Crystalia, both a tool for channeling magic and a walking staff for more mundane support. As he grasped Frost Fathom, a subtle resonance passed between the staff and his hand, a reawakening of the deep connection between wizard and tool. The runes within glowed momentarily brighter, then settled into a steady, subtle illumination. With his preparations complete, Aldrin rejoined the sprites, who had been entertaining themselves by creating elaborate ice sculptures in the air, their innate magic allowing them to form and reform the moisture in the atmosphere into delicate, temporary works of art. "I am ready," he announced, securing the satchel across his body and planting Frost Fathom firmly beside him. "Lead on, friends." The sprites darted out the door, their excitement palpable in the increased tempo of their bell chimes. Aldrin followed at a more measured pace, pausing only to seal his tower with a simple gesture, a passing of his hand before the doorway, leaving no visible lock but creating a barrier that would prevent entry by any save himself. Outside, the eternal twilight of Crystalia bathed the landscape in its familiar golden blue glow. The horizon seemed somehow different to Aldrin's experienced eye. The usual sharp delineation between land and sky softened, as though the boundary itself was becoming less defined. Lumeria and her companions formed a loose formation around the wizard as they set off across the snow. They didn't follow any visible path. Indeed, in the constantly shifting snows of Crystalia, permanent trails were impossible. Instead, Lumeria led them according to an internal compass that all sprites possessed, an innate sense of direction that was never wrong. As they traveled, Aldrin maintained a steady, unhurried pace, though capable of more rapid movement when necessary. He preferred to experience the journey fully, to observe the subtle changes in the landscape, to feel the variations in the magical currents that flowed beneath the surface of the realm. The snow underfoot was neither wet nor particularly cold, but had a curious springiness to it, as though walking on a layer of the finest down. Each step produced a soft, crunching sound, satisfying in its consistency. The air remained perfectly still, yet somehow never felt stale or confining. It carried the sense of the realm, that indefinable sweetness, hints of what might be described as mint or wintergreen, and occasionally, when passing near one of the many ice formations that dotted the landscape, a brief note of something like ozone, sharp and clarifying. Their path took them through a forest of ice spires, slender, twisting columns that rose from the snow like the trunks of impossibly tall trees. These weren't merely static formations, but living parts of Crystalia, growing infinitesimally over centuries, shifting slightly with the magical currents that ran through the realm. The spaces between these spires were filled with a fine mist that hovered at chest height, not obscuring vision, but adding a dreamlike quality to the passage. Within this mist lived the Whisperlings, tiny, barely visible beings that appeared as mere motes of light to the casual observer. Aldrin, with his heightened perception, could see them more clearly. Diminutive humanoid figures formed of pure light, their movements quick and erratic like those of hummingbirds. They were curious about visitors, darting close to examine the travelers before zipping away again, leaving trails of sparkling light that lingered for moments before fading. "They're more numerous than I've seen before," Aldrin commented, as a particularly bold Whisperling hovered before his face for a few seconds, its tiny features expressing what seemed like intense curiosity. Lumeria nodded, her own delicate features showing concern. "Many things are changing in their patterns, ancient wizard. The Whisperlings usually stay deep within the mist, rarely showing themselves even to us. Now they venture out, as though seeking something, or perhaps fleeing something." This observation added to Aldrin's growing sense that the changes in Crystalia were more significant than even he had initially perceived. The realm had always been characterized by a delicate balance, a harmony between its various inhabitants and the magical energies that sustained them all. Disruptions to this balance were rare and never without meaning. As they continued their journey, The spire forest gradually thinned, giving way to a vast open expanse that the denizens of Crystalia called the Glimmer Plain. Here, the snow was interspersed with patches of exposed ice so clear it was like walking on solid air, with the depths below visible through its transparent surface. These patches weren't dangerous. The ice was stronger than steel despite its clarity, but they created a somewhat disorienting experience for those not accustomed to seemingly walking on nothing. Within these clear patches, movement could sometimes be seen. Shadowy forms that Aldrin knew to be the deep swimmers, ancient entities that lived within the ice itself rather than upon it. Little was known of their nature or purpose, as they rarely interacted with surface dwellers, but they were generally considered benevolent presences, caretakers of the deepest layers of Crystalia. The company stopped at the edge of the Glimmer Plain, the sprites hovering in a loose circle, while Aldrin stood quietly, surveying the expanse before them. The journey thus far had taken several hours, though as always in Crystalia, time felt somewhat elastic, neither dragging nor rushing, but simply flowing at its own peculiar pace. "We should rest here briefly," Aldrin suggested, finding a comfortable spot to sit on a small rise in the snow. The crossing of the Glimmer Plain requires focused attention. The sprites, who didn't experience fatigue in the same way as more solid beings, nevertheless settled around him, some perching on nearby ice formations, while others continued to hover, their wings creating subtle rainbow refractions in the light. From his satchel, Aldrin produced some of the provisions he had packed. Crystal berries, of course, but also thin wafers of what appeared to be translucent bread, though its consistency was closer to that of a perfect snowflake, dissolving with a burst of flavor and energy when placed on the tongue. He offered these to the sprites as well, though they primarily sustained themselves by absorbing ambient magical energy rather than consuming physical food. Still, they accepted the offer with delight, experiencing the flavors as a form of entertainment rather than nourishment. As they rested, Aldrin opened his senses fully to the environment, extending his awareness beyond the physical and into the magical currents that flowed beneath the surface of reality in Crystalia. What he perceived confirmed his growing concerns. The usually steady, harmonious flow of energies was developing eddies and countercurrents, like a stream whose bed had suddenly shifted. "I can taste it in the air," said Frostling, the sprite, with exceptional senses. "Like a storm, but not of wind or snow. A storm of possibility." Aldrin nodded in agreement. "Well perceived, Frostling. The fundamental patterns of Crystalia are reorganizing themselves. The question is whether this is a natural evolution or a response to some external influence." The sprites looked to each other, their expressions a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Change in an immortal realm was both fascinating and potentially unsettling. After their brief respite, the company continued their journey, crossing the Glimmer Plain with careful steps. Aldrin used Frost Fathom, not just for support, but as a sounding tool, tapping it lightly on the ice occasionally to send magical resonances deep into the transparency, both as a greeting to the deep swimmers and as a way of gauging the stability of the ice itself. Halfway across the plain, an unusual sight gave them pause. In the distance, where the Glimmer Plain met the foothills of the Crystal Mountains, a column of what looked like frozen light rose straight into the sky. It wasn't the Aurora Veil, which was more diffuse and shifting, but a solid pillar of radiance that seemed to connect the ground directly to the heavens. "I have never seen such a phenomenon," Lumeria admitted, her voice filled with wonder. "It stands near the path to the Whispering Glacier." Aldrin studied the column thoughtfully. "It appears our journey may hold more discoveries than anticipated. Let us proceed with heightened awareness." Their pace increased slightly, not from haste or worry, but from a shared curiosity about this new manifestation. As they drew closer to the edge of the glimmer plane, the column of light became more distinct, its surface not smooth as it had appeared from a distance, but rippling gently, like water flowing upward against gravity. The transition from the glimmer plane to the foothills of the Crystal Mountains was marked by a gradual change in the terrain. The flat expanse gave way to gentle slopes, and the pristine snow became interspersed with outcroppings of crystal that protruded from the ground like the exposed bones of the earth. These weren't merely ice, but true crystals of various compositions: quartz, amethyst, beryl, and others that had no names in the languages of ordinary lands. They hummed with faint resonances, creating a subtle background harmony that was felt more than heard. Music. As they ascended into the foothills, following a natural path that wound between the crystal outcroppings, the column of light remained, their beacon, now clearly visible ahead and to the right of their path. Its base appeared to be located in a small valley between two of the larger hills. "The Whispering Glacier lies just beyond that ridge," Lumeria indicated, pointing to a steep incline ahead. "But perhaps we should investigate this light phenomenon first. It lies not far out of our way." Aldrin considered this suggestion, extending his magical senses toward the column. There was no sense of danger or malevolence from it, but rather a feeling of invitation, as though it had manifested specifically to be discovered. "Yes," he decided. "Let us see what this new wonder may tell us. It may indeed be connected to the changes we seek to understand." They altered their course, heading now directly toward the column of light. As they drew closer, the air began to tingle with energy, causing the sprite's bells to chime without movement and making the fine hairs on Aldrin's skin rise slightly. This was powerful magic, ancient and deep, yet it felt familiar to the wizard, resonating with something inside him that he couldn't quite identify. The valley that held the column proved to be a perfect circle, as though scooped from the earth by a giant's hand. Its floor was not snow or ice, but a mosaic of crystals, flat and fitted together with such precision that the seams were nearly invisible. The patterns formed by these crystals seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles, suggesting meanings or images just beyond conscious comprehension. And at the center stood the column of light, rising from a pedestal of what appeared to be solid starlight, a material so rare that Aldrin had seen it only twice before in all his centuries. The column itself, now that they were close enough to observe it properly, was not a single beam, but countless strands of light woven together, each a different shade of blue, silver, or white, creating a braided effect that continually moved and reformed itself. The company stopped at the edge of the crystal floor, a shared instinct telling them that this threshold should not be crossed without ceremony or invitation. Aldrin planted Frost Fathom firmly beside him and studied the scene, his expression one of measured wonder. "This is old magic," he said softly. older perhaps than my time in Crystalia, which is saying much indeed. The sprites hovered in silence, their usual chatter stilled by the solemnity of the moment. The only sound was the almost subliminal hum emanating from the crystal floor and the whisper of the light strands as they moved against each other within the column. After a moment of respectful observation, Aldrin stepped forward, placing one foot on the crystal floor. Immediately, a change swept through the valley. The crystal mosaic beneath them illuminated from within, each segment lighting up in sequence, creating a path from where Aldrin stood directly to the column at the center. "It recognizes you," Luminara whispered, her voice filled with awe. Aldrin nodded slowly. "Not me specifically, perhaps, but it recognizes intention. It has been waiting for someone to come with the right question." Encouraged by this response, the wizard continued forward, following the illuminated path across the crystal floor. The sprites remained at the edge, intuitively understanding that this interaction was meant for Aldrin alone, at least initially. As he approached the column, the light strands within it began to move more rapidly, their pattern changing from a simple braid to something more complex, more purposeful. When Aldrin stood directly before it, the movement suddenly ceased, the strands freezing in a configuration that, from his perspective, formed a perfect doorway. Yes, a doorway. There could be no mistaking it. Within the frame created by the light strands was not the view of the valley beyond, but something entirely different. Aldrin could see a landscape that was not Crystalia, though it shared some similar features. There were mountains of ice, yes, but also vast forests of trees that seemed made of crystal, their leaves tinkling like bells in an unfelt breeze. The sky visible through this portal was deeper blue than that of Crystalia, and filled with floating islands of ice that drifted like clouds. For several minutes, Aldrin stood motionless before this doorway, not out of fear, but out of respect for the magnitude of the discovery. A portal to another realm. This was unprecedented in his experience of Crystalia, which had always seemed complete unto itself, a closed system of perfect balance. Finally, he raised Frost Fathom and gently touched its tip to the edge of the doorway. The staff passed through without resistance, confirming that this was indeed a true portal, not merely an illusion or vision. Withdrawing the staff, Aldrin turned and beckoned to the sprites, who quickly flew to join him, their expressions a mixture of trepidation and excitement as they beheld the doorway, a passage to somewhere else. Frostling breathed, hovering close to the portal but not crossing its threshold. "I can smell differences in the air beyond. New scents, new possibilities." Luminara circled the column slowly, studying it from all angles. "This must be connected to the changes we've been sensing," she said. "But has it appeared because of those changes, or is it causing them?" "A pertinent question," Aldrin replied, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "I suspect it may be both, part of a larger pattern of transformation that is only beginning to reveal itself." The wizard stepped back from the portal, though not out of rejection of its invitation. Rather, he was acknowledging that such a discovery required careful consideration rather than impulsive action. "We should continue to the Whispering Glacier, as planned," he decided. "The songs it has been singing may provide context for this portal. Knowledge before action, always." The sprites nodded in agreement. though their gaze lingered on the doorway as they prepared to depart. It was Lumeria who asked the question they were all considering. Will we return to explore what lies beyond? Aldrin's eyes crinkled at the corners, a smile that spoke of both wisdom and adventure. Indeed we shall, Lumeria. But first, let us gather all the pieces of this puzzle that we can. The portal appears stable. It will await our return. With one last look at the mysterious doorway, they left the valley, resuming their path toward the Whispering Glacier. The journey now took on a different quality, a sense of being part of something momentous, of witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in the eternal story of Crystalia. The path to the Whispering Glacier led them higher into the Crystal Mountains, following a natural staircase of ice terraces that spiraled up the mountainside. As they climbed, the air became, if possible, even clearer, creating an effect where distant objects seemed nearly as detailed as those close at hand. The perpetual twilight of Crystalia also changed subtly, the golden tones giving way to a purer silver as they ascended. During their climb, they passed several crystal pools, perfectly circular depressions filled with a liquid that was neither water nor ice, but something in between, with the fluidity of the former, but the clarity and refractive properties of the latter. These pools were known to show visions to those who gazed into them, though what one saw was unpredictable. It might be a scene from across Crystalia in the present moment, an echo of the past, or even, it was said, a glimpse of possible futures. Aldrin paused at one such pool, kneeling beside it to peer into its pristine surface. The sprites gathered around, curious what the wizard might see. For a long moment the pool showed only reflections, but then the surface rippled without any touch or breeze, and an image formed. What Aldrin beheld was a chamber of ice far more vast than any in his tower, its walls carved with runes similar to those within Frost Fathom, but on an architectural scale. In the center of this chamber stood a figure he didn't recognize, tall and slender, with features that suggested neither human nor sprite, nor any known denizen of Crystalia. This figure was studying what appeared to be a map etched into a table of pure ice, their expression one of intense concentration. As quickly as it had appeared, the vision faded, the pool's surface returning to placid reflection. Aldrin straightened slowly, his expression thoughtful, but revealing nothing of what meaning he might attach to what he had seen. What was it, ancient wizard? Frostling asked, unable to contain his curiosity. What did the pool show you? A piece of our puzzle, perhaps, Aldrin replied enigmatically. Though whether it belongs to the past, present, or future, I cannot say with certainty. They continued their ascent, the crystal pools becoming more numerous as they neared the top of the path. Each showed different visions to those who looked, the sprites darting from one to another with delighted exclamations at what they beheld. Lumeria saw a field of flowers made entirely of ice, blooming and swaying in perfect silence. Frostling glimpsed what he described as a city of towers formed from frozen music, though what that might mean was unclear even to him. Music. Finally, they crested the last terrace and beheld the Whispering Glacier in all its magnificent scale. Unlike glaciers in the ordinary world, which are massive rivers of ice flowing with imperceptible slowness, the Whispering Glacier was a vertical wall of blue-white ice that stretched across the entire horizon. Its surface was not uniform, but textured with countless crevices, tunnels, and formations that resembled frozen waves caught in mid-motion. Most striking were the larger openings that punctuated the glacier face, cave-like entrances of varying sizes, each perfectly circular, as though bored with immense precision. It was from these openings that the famous whispers emerged, as the constant but gentle winds of Crystalia's higher elevations passed through the complex internal structure of the glacier. Even from a distance, it was apparent that something had changed. The whispers, which Aldrin remembered as subtle, almost subliminal sounds that one had to concentrate to perceive, were now clearly audible, rising and falling in what seemed almost like conversation. And they carried tone, melody, even what might be described as emotional quality. Sorrow in one passage, joy in another, wonder in a third. As the company approached the nearest of the openings, the whispers grew more distinct, and Frostling had been right. There were indeed words, now, phrases in an ancient language that predated even Aldrin's long sojourn in Crystalia. The wizard listened intently, his head slightly tilted, mentally translating what he heard. Gateway opens between the realms. The long separation ends. Return, return. The circle completes itself. These phrases repeated with variations, interspersed with long passages that seemed to be poetry, or perhaps historical accounts in the same archaic tongue. The overall effect was hypnotic, drawing the listeners into a state of deep attention and receptivity. The sprites hovered silently near Aldrin, their usual ebullience subdued by the solemnity of the glacier's song. Even their bells had fallen silent, as though in deference to the older music emerging from the ice, after listening for what might have been minutes or hours. Time seemed particularly fluid in the presence of the glacier. Aldrin finally spoke, his voice soft, but carrying clearly to his companions. The whispering glacier speaks of the portal we discovered. It says this is not a new phenomenon, but a renewal of something ancient, a connection between Crystalia and somewhere that was once known to us, but has long been separated. Lumeria drifted closer to the wizard, her delicate features showing concern mixed with excitement. Does it speak of danger, ancient wizard? Should we fear this connection? Aldrin shook his head slowly. Not fear, no, but certainly respect. The glacier speaks of change, of completion, of return. These are not threatening concepts in themselves, but they suggest a significant transformation in the nature of Crystalia as we have known it. The wizard moved closer to the glacier face, placing one hand on the smooth ice beside one of the circular openings. The whispers seemed to respond to his touch, becoming more focused, more directed, as though the glacier was now speaking specifically to him, rather than simply voicing its ancient knowledge to the air. After another period of deep listening, Aldrin turned back to the sprites, his expression now one of decision rather than contemplation. We must return to the portal, he said. The glacier has confirmed what I suspected. This doorway is part of Crystalia's original nature, a connection that existed at its formation but has been dormant for ages beyond counting. Its reawakening signals not a disruption, but a completion. The sprites exchanged glances, their communication including subtle changes in the luminosity of their forms, as well as facial expressions. It was Frostling who spoke for them all. We will accompany you, ancient wizard, wherever this discovery may lead. Their descent from the Whispering Glacier was more rapid than their climb had been, a combination of the natural assistance of gravity and a new sense of purpose that infused their movements with energy. They passed the crystal pools again, but none stopped to gaze this time, their focus now entirely on returning to the mysterious portal. The valley of the light column appeared unchanged when they arrived, the portal still shimmering within its frame of woven light strands. If anything, the doorway seemed more substantial now, the view through it clearer, more inviting. Aldrin stood before it once more, but this time with the air of one who has moved from questioning to decision. He turned to address the sprites, who hovered expectantly nearby. The Whispering Glacier has revealed that this portal leads to what might be called a sister realm to Crystalia, a place that was once connected to our world, but has existed separately for eons. The reconnection of these realms is part of a natural cycle, a cosmic rhythm that operates on a scale far beyond ordinary time. He gestured to the doorway with frost fathom. I intend to cross this threshold, to explore what lies beyond, to understand what this reconnection means for Crystalia. This is not without risk, but it is necessary. Lumeria darted forward, her determination clear. We will come with you, ancient wizard. Aldrin smiled at the sprite's courage, but shook his head gently. Your loyalty warms my heart, Lumeria, but I think it best if I make this first crossing alone. Crystalia may need its sprites in the days to come, to observe and report on the changes that may manifest as the connection strengthens. He saw the disappointment in their expressions and added, but I will need your help in another way. Return to my tower. Within the central chamber, beneath the meditation spiral, is a hidden compartment containing an artifact called the Echo Crystal. It appears as a perfectly transparent diamond, the size of a human heart. Bring it to me here. It will allow me to communicate across the threshold if needed. The sprites were clearly torn between their desire to accompany Aldrin on his exploration and their understanding of the wisdom in his request. Finally, Lumeria nodded. We will do as you ask, ancient wizard, but we will return with all haste. I know you will, Aldrin replied with genuine affection. And I will wait for your return before crossing. The portal has existed in dormancy for ages. A few more hours will make little difference. With this plan agreed upon, the sprites departed, their flight back toward Aldrin's tower faster than their usual meandering paths, purposeful and direct. The wizard watched them go, then settled himself comfortably on the crystal floor to wait, his back straight, frost fathom laid across his lap, his breathing slow and measured. This was a moment for reflection, for preparation of both mind and spirit. Whatever lay beyond the portal, Aldrin knew it would require him to be fully present, fully aware, open to new understanding, yet grounded in his deep connection to Crystalia. As he sat in meditation before the portal, Aldrin's consciousness expanded, becoming more receptive to the subtle energies surrounding him. The crystal floor beneath him pulsed with slow, regular waves of light that matched the rhythm of his breathing. The column of light seemed to respond as well, the woven strands moving in patterns that became increasingly harmonious, increasingly meaningful. Time passed differently in this state of expanded awareness. What might have been the hours felt like moments, yet contained the depth of days. Aldrin was not idle during this time, but actively preparing. aligning his considerable magical abilities with the energy of the portal, ensuring that when he did cross the threshold, he would do so in a state of perfect balance. The sprites returned as the quality of light in Crystalia shifted toward what might be called evening. Though without true day or night, it was simply a subtle cooling of the golden tones toward deeper blues. They arrived as a group, with Lumeria carrying a small chest of frosted crystal, clearly handling it with great care. Aldrin emerged from his meditation as they approached, rising fluidly to his feet and greeting them with a warm smile. "Well done, my friends. I trust the journey was uneventful." "The tower was as you left it," Lumeria reported, presenting the chest to Aldrin, "though we noticed more changes in the landscape. The Aurora Veil has descended further, now touching the tops of the crystal mountains in places, and the deep swimmers are more active, visible even in the shallower ice." Aldrin nodded, accepting the chest and opening it carefully. Inside, nestled on a cushion of what appeared to be frozen cloud, was the Echo Crystal, a perfectly clear diamond-like stone that seemed to contain galaxies within its facets when viewed from certain angles. "Perfect," the wizard said, lifting the crystal and slipping it into an inner pocket of his robe. "This will allow me to send impressions back to you, to share what I discover beyond the portal." With the Echo Crystal secured, Aldrin turned once more to face the doorway. The view through it remained unchanged. The crystalline forest, the floating ice islands, the deep blue sky of the realm beyond. Yet now, with the knowledge from the Whispering Glacier and his period of meditative preparation, it seemed less alien, more like a forgotten homeland waiting to be rediscovered. The wizard addressed the sprites one final time. "Wait here for my first communication through the Echo Crystal. If all is well, I will send a signal within what would be a day's time by our reckoning. If you receive no word by then, return to the Whispering Glacier and seek further guidance from its songs." The sprites nodded solemnly, their bells creating a soft, harmonious chime that sounded almost like a blessing. Lumeria spoke for them all. "We will be here, ancient wizard. May your journey bring understanding and harmony." Aldrin gripped Frost Fathom firmly, straightened his robes, and with a deep, centering breath, stepped forward through the portal. The transition was unlike any magical transport he had experienced before. There was no disorientation, no sense of distance traveled, simply a single step that carried him from one reality to another. The air around him changed subtly, still, crisp, and sweet, but with new notes, new essences that his senses couldn't immediately categorize. He stood now on soil that was not Crystalia's, though it shared a similar magical resonance. The ground beneath his feet was covered not with snow, but with a carpet of tiny crystal formations that resembled moss, yielding slightly under his weight and emitting a soft blue luminescence where he stepped. The forest he had glimpsed through the portal now surrounded him, trees of living crystal rising to impressive heights, their trunks spiraling patterns of translucent material, through which flowed visible currents of what appeared to be liquid light. Their leaves were indeed crystalline, catching and refracting the light from the deep blue sky, creating dappled patterns on the ground that shifted and moved even when the leaves themselves were still. Looking back, Aldrin could still see the portal appearing from this side as a doorway formed from columns of frozen light. through it, he could observe the sprites hovering anxiously on the other side, watching him. He raised a hand in reassurance, and they responded with visible relief, their forms brightening momentarily, turning to fully take in his new surroundings. Aldrin noticed a path leading away from the portal, through the crystal forest. Unlike the natural winding trails of Crystalia, this was clearly designed, a straight causeway of what appeared to be polished moonstone, its surface inlaid with patterns of silver and blue that matched the runes within Frost Fathom. The wizard studied these patterns with interest. They were indeed in the same ancient language, and while complex, he could interpret their general meaning. The way of return, they seemed to say, and the path of reunion. This supported what the Whispering Glacier had revealed, that these realms had once been connected, had perhaps even been a single realm that had somehow been separated. And now, after an unimaginable span of time, they were reconnecting. Aldrin decided to follow this path, curious where it might lead. As he walked, he remained highly attuned to his surroundings, noting the subtle differences between this place and Crystalia. The quality of light was different, more directional, suggesting an actual sun rather than the diffuse illumination of his home realm. The crystal trees grew in patterns that suggested deliberate planting rather than natural growth, and there was a sense of anticipation in the air, as though the very environment was aware of his presence and waiting to see what he would do. After walking for what might have been an hour, the forest began to thin, giving way to a more open landscape. Ahead, Aldrin could see what appeared to be structures, buildings of some kind constructed from the same crystalline materials as the trees, but in geometric forms that spoke clearly of intelligent design. As he approached these structures, the wizard began to feel a growing sense of familiarity, not with the specific place, but with its essential nature. There was something here that resonated deeply with his own being, as though he was approaching not just a physical location, but a source of meaning connected to his very identity. The path led directly to what appeared to be the central structure, a domed building of perfect proportions, its surface a seamless blend of crystal and what looked like solidified light. The entrance was an open archway, requiring no door or gate, inviting rather than restricting access. Aldrin paused at this threshold, extending his magical senses to scan for any danger or deception. He detected nothing threatening, only a complex layering of ancient enchantments designed to preserve and protect rather than to harm. Taking the measured breath, he stepped through the archway into a chamber that took even his experienced eyes a moment to comprehend. It was the very room he had seen in the crystal pool's vision, vast, circular, its walls inscribed with the familiar runes, a table of ice at its center. But what the vision hadn't shown was the ceiling, a perfect dome that appeared to be a window looking directly into the cosmos, showing stars and celestial phenomena that existed in neither Crystalia's sky nor any Aldrin had observed in his long existence. And standing at the table, just as in the vision, was the figure, tall, slender, with features suggesting neither human nor sprite, nor any known being of Crystalia. Now, seeing them in person, rather than through the crystal pool's reflection, Aldrin could perceive more details. Their skin had the appearance of polished platinum, with subtle patterns similar to the runes on the walls, flowing just beneath the surface. Their eyes were multifaceted, like perfectly cut sapphires reflecting light in complex patterns, and they wore what seemed to be a robe made from woven starlight, constantly shifting in subtle patterns. The figure looked up as Aldrin entered, showing no surprise at his appearance, but rather an expression that might be interpreted as profound relief or satisfaction, as though the wizard's arrival fulfilled a long-held expectation. At last, the figure spoke, their voice like crystal chimes struck by a gentle hammer. The first warden returns to the Chamber of Convergence. The cycle nears completion. Music. Aldrin stood quietly, absorbing both the magnificence of the chamber and the curious greeting. First Warden, the being had called him, a title he had never borne, yet which stirred something deep within his memory, as though awakening knowledge long dormant. "You know me," Aldrin stated, rather than asked, his voice steady despite the strangeness of the situation. The platinum being inclined their head in what appeared to be a gesture of respect. "Not you specifically, perhaps, but your role, your essence. I am Ilaria, keeper of the Convergence. I have maintained this chamber and the knowledge it contains since the Sundering." "The Sundering," Aldrin repeated, the term resonating with those fragments of ancient memory that were beginning to stir within him. "The separation of the realms." "Yes," Ilaria confirmed. "Once, what you know as Crystalia and what we call Lumeria were a single realm. Crystallumus, the resonant kingdom, a cataclysm of cosmic proportions, sundered our world into separate domains, each preserving a portion of the original magic, the original knowledge." The keeper gestured to the table. "This map shows both realms as they were before the Sundering, and as they have evolved separately since. The patterns of reconnection are beginning. The portal you pass through is merely the first of many that will form as the cosmic alignment progresses." Aldrin approached the table, studying the intricate map etched into its icy surface. It was indeed a representation of two realms. One recognizably Crystalia, with its vast snowfields and ice formations. The other, this new place, Lumeria, with its crystal forests and floating islands. But the map was not static. Subtle movements showed the two realms gradually shifting, like puzzle pieces, slowly moving back into alignment. "And my role in this?" Aldrin asked, though even as he spoke the question, answers were forming in his mind, fragments of knowledge reassembling themselves from the deepest recesses of his consciousness. Ilaria's multifaceted eyes reflected the light in patterns that seemed to convey compassion. "Your memories were necessarily suppressed during the long separation, a measure taken to preserve your sanity through the ages of isolation. But you are indeed the first warden of Crystallumus, appointed to guard the knowledge and magic of our realm until the time of reconvergence." The keeper moved around the table, closer to Aldrin, but maintaining a respectful distance. "I am the last keeper, the final guardian of Lumeria. Between us, we have maintained the essential frequencies of our sundered home, allowing this moment to eventually arrive." Aldrin placed his hand on the map, feeling the coolness of its surface against his palm. As he did so, more memories began to surface, not as a flood, but as a gentle stream, allowing him to integrate them without being overwhelmed. He saw flashes of Crystallumus before the Sundering, a realm of such beauty and harmony that it defied description in any language now known. He glimpsed the cataclysm itself, a cosmic event involving forces beyond comprehension, and he remembered with growing clarity his own decision to become the guardian of one portion of the sundered realm, knowing it would mean eons of separation, but also the preservation of what would otherwise be lost forever. "The memory returns," he said softly, more to himself than to Ilaria. "Not all at once, but enough to understand." The keeper nodded, apparently satisfied with this progress. "The full restoration of your memory will take time, as will the complete reconvergence of the realms. But the process has begun, and now it cannot be halted. The cosmos has aligned once more in the pattern that allows our sundered home to heal." Aldrin straightened, his hand still resting on the map. "And the denizens of our realms, the sprites, the frost elk, the deep swimmers of Crystalia, and whatever beings inhabit Lumeria, what will this reconvergence mean for them?" "A fair question, First Warden," Ilaria replied. "The inhabitants of both realms are, in their essences, children of Crystalumis. Some were divided in the sundering, evolving differently in each realm. Others emerged after the division, shaped by the unique conditions of their separate homes. The reconvergence will be a gradual process of harmonization, not the elimination of these diverse beings, but rather an enrichment, an expansion of possibility for all." The keeper moved to a wall of the chamber, where a series of niches held what appeared to be crystalline vessels of various shapes, each containing what looked like pure distilled light in different colors. Selecting one that glowed with a soft silver radiance, Ilaria returned to Aldrin. "This contains the essence of remembrance. It will help accelerate the restoration of your full memory, should you choose to accept it. However, I must warn you that with remembrance comes responsibility. As the First Warden, you will need to guide the inhabitants of Crystalia through the changes to come." Aldrin considered the vessel thoughtfully. The wizard he had been for centuries, the solitary observer and caretaker of Crystalia, was, he now understood, merely one facet of his true self. The First Warden was something more, something greater, with duties and responsibilities that extended beyond simple observation. He reached for the echo crystal in his pocket, feeling its cool perfection against his fingers. "Before I make this choice, I should communicate with my companions who wait by the portal. They deserve to know what I have discovered, what it means for our realm." Ilaria nodded in understanding. "Of course, the Chamber of Convergence amplifies magical communication. Your echo crystal will transmit with perfect clarity from here." Aldrin removed the crystal from his pocket and held it before him in both hands. The gem responded immediately to his intention, beginning to glow with an inner light that pulsed gently. The wizard closed his eyes, focusing his thoughts, creating a concentrated impression of all he had learned: the nature of the portals, the history of Crystalumis and its sundering, the gradual reconvergence now beginning, and his own role as First Warden. This complex bundle of information and feeling flowed from his mind into the echo crystal, which absorbed it completely. Then, with a simple, magical command, Aldrin sent the accumulated knowledge outward, directing it specifically to the sprites waiting by the portal. In his mind's eye, he could see them receiving the transmission, their delicate forms illuminated by the sudden glow of shared knowledge, their expressions changing from concern to wonder as they understood the magnitude of what was occurring. When the communication was complete, Aldrin opened his eyes to find Ilaria watching him with what appeared to be approval. "You care deeply for the beings of Crystalia," the keeper observed. "This is as it should be. The first warden's duty has always been not just to the abstract concept of the realm, but to its living inhabitants. They have been my companions and my joy through ages of isolation," Aldrin replied simply. "Their well-being is inseparable from the well-being of the realm itself." With this acknowledgement, he turned his attention back to the vessel of remembrance that Ilaria still held. The decision before him was momentous. To fully reclaim his identity as First Warden would mean new responsibilities, new challenges, but also a completion of self that he now recognized he had been unconsciously seeking throughout his long sojourn in Crystalia. "I accept the essence of remembrance," he said, his voice reflecting the solemnity of the moment. "And with it, I accept the duty of guiding Crystalia through the reconvergence." Ilaria inclined their head once more and offered the crystalline vessel. "Then drink, First Warden, and remember who you truly are." Aldrin took the vessel, feeling its pleasant weight in his hands. The silver light within pulsed as though alive, resonating with his own inner being. He raised it to his lips and drank. The essence was neither liquid nor gas, but something in between, flowing into him like cool moonlight, spreading throughout his body in gentle waves. The effect was not instantaneous, but unfolded gradually over the next several minutes. Memories began to surface, not as disjointed fragments, but as a coherent narrative. His life before the sundering, his training as a warden of Crystalumis, his solemn vow to preserve what could be saved when the cataclysm could not be prevented. He remembered colleagues, friends, mentors, other wardens and keepers who had taken similar vows for other portions of the sundered realm. And with these memories came knowledge, spells and enchantments far more powerful and complex than those he had wielded as the Wizard of Crystalia. Understanding of cosmic principles that governed the relationship between realms. Insight into the nature of the magic that permeated all of existence. As this restoration of self continued, Aldrin remained outwardly calm, though Ilaria could surely perceive the profound transformation occurring within him. When the process was complete, or at least as complete as it could be in this first stage, the wizard opened his eyes with a new depth of awareness, a new sense of purpose. "I remember," he said simply. "Not everything yet, but enough to understand what must be done." Ilaria nodded, seemingly satisfied. "The rest will return in time as the reconvergence progresses. For now, you have what you need to begin the preparations in Crystalia." Aldrin turned to study the map once more, now understanding far more of its complexities. He could see that the reunion of the realms would occur in phases, with multiple portals forming at key nexus points where the magical frequencies of Crystalia and Lumeria most closely aligned. Each phase would bring new challenges, new opportunities for integration and harmony. "I must return to Crystalia," he said after careful consideration. "My sprites," he smiled at the possessive term, so natural after centuries of companionship. "The sprites will have shared what they've learned with others by now. Questions will be arising, perhaps even fears. My presence there will help ease the transition." "A wise decision," Ilaria agreed. "The beings of both realms will need guidance as they begin to encounter new phenomena, new possibilities. In Lumeria, I have already begun preparing our inhabitants for the changes to come. The keeper moved to a different section of the chamber wall, where a crystal cabinet stood. Opening it, they removed what appeared to be a pendant, a small replica of the echo crystal, suspended on a chain of woven silver. Take this resonance pendant. It will allow us to communicate directly as needed, coordinating our efforts across the still separate portions of our realm. Aldrin accepted the pendant with a nod of gratitude, placing it around his neck. The moment it touched his chest, he felt a subtle connection form, a channel of communication now open between himself and Ilaria, regardless of their physical locations. There is much to do, he acknowledged, many to prepare, many to reassure, but also much to celebrate. This reconvergence represents not an ending, but a rebirth, a healing of an ancient wound in the fabric of reality itself. Ilaria's crystalline features formed what appeared to be a smile. Precisely, First Warden, and that perspective will be vital in helping others navigate the changes to come. Not all will immediately recognize the beauty in transformation. Fear of the unknown is natural for all conscious beings. Your wisdom and patience will be essential guides. With his new understanding firmly established and the tools of communication now in place, Aldrin prepared to take his leave of the Chamber of Convergence, to return to Crystalia and begin his work there. But before departing, he had one more question for the Keeper. Ilaria, you called yourself the last Keeper of Lumeria. Were there others before you, as there were multiple Wardens of Crystalumis? The Keeper's multifaceted eyes seemed to dim slightly. Yes, there were originally 7 Keepers, each responsible for a different aspect of Lumeria's preservation. I am the last surviving member of that council. The others faded. Over the millennia, the separation was harder on Lumeria than on Crystalia, our realm more fragile in its isolated state. Maintaining it required great sacrifice. Aldrin felt a deep empathy for this being who had endured such solitude, such responsibility. Then, the reconvergence is even more urgent for your realm than for mine. It is necessary for both, Ilaria replied simply. Neither can truly thrive in isolation. The wholeness of Crystalumis is not merely desirable, but essential for the magic that sustains us all. With this understanding, and with a formal gesture of respect that came naturally to him now, from his restored memories, Aldrin took his leave of the Chamber of Convergence. The Keeper responded with a similar gesture, a ritual exchange that felt ancient and familiar, connecting them across the eons to the harmony that had once existed and would soon exist again. The journey back through the crystal forest to the portal seemed shorter somehow, as though the path itself recognized the urgency of his mission and contracted accordingly. The trees appeared more luminous now, their crystalline structures resonating subtly as he passed, as though awakening to the presence of the first Warden among them once more. When Aldrin reached the portal, he found it unchanged, a doorway between worlds, stable and inviting. Through it, he could see the sprites still waiting faithfully, though now they were joined by other beings of Crystalia, a small group of frost elk standing at a respectful distance, a cluster of whisperlings hovering at the edge of perception, and even a few ice foxes their curious faces bright with anticipation. Word had spread quickly, it seemed. The knowledge he had shared through the echo crystal had been disseminated among the denizens of Crystalia, drawing them to this historic site to witness the return of their wizard. No, their warden from the realm beyond. With a deep, centering breath, Aldrin stepped back through the portal, returning to the familiar landscape of Crystalia. But he returned changed, not just in knowledge or memory, but in his very being. He was still Aldrin the Wizard to those who had known him thus, but he was also now consciously the first warden of Crystalumis, guardian of a tradition and a purpose that stretched back before the sundering itself. The sprites darted forward immediately, surrounding him with their chiming welcome. Luminara, her delicate features alight with wonder, spoke first. Ancient Wizard, or should we now say First Warden, your message through the echo crystal has spread throughout Crystalia. Many are gathering at the Whispering Glacier, seeking to understand what these changes mean. Aldrin smiled warmly at his faithful companions. I am still Aldrin to you, my friends, though indeed my role expands with the remembrance of who I was before. And yes, we should join those gathering at the glacier. There is much to share, much to prepare for. As he spoke, he became aware of a subtle change in his own appearance. The robes he wore, which had seemed woven of frost before his crossing, now shimmered with deeper enchantments, patterns emerging within the fabric that matched the runes of the Chamber of Convergence. Frost Fathom, too, had transformed slightly, the runes within it now glowing with steadier purpose, aligning with his restored identity. The assembled beings of Crystalia noticed these changes as well, a murmur of awe passing through them. The frost elk bowed their crystalline antlers in what appeared to be recognition or respect. The whisperlings darted in complex patterns that Aldrin now recognized as an ancient form of salutation, preserved instinctively through the ages of separation. With the gentle authority that felt both new and familiar, Aldrin addressed them all. Friends and denizens of Crystalia, we stand at the threshold of a great transformation. What we have known as our complete world is, in truth, but half of a greater realm. Crystalumis, sundered long ago but now beginning to heal, to reunite. He gestured to the portal behind him. This doorway is the first of many that will form between Crystalia and its sister realm, Lumeria. Through these portals will come new wonders, new knowledge, new possibilities for all. This is not an ending, but a magnificent beginning, the start of a restoration that will enrich all our lives. The gathered beings listened in rapt attention, absorbing the enormity of what was being revealed. There was no fear in their reactions, only wonder and curiosity, the natural responses of those whose existence was already magical, already filled with beauty beyond ordinary comprehension. Come, Aldrin continued, let us journey to the Whispering Glacier, where more have gathered. The time for isolation is ending. We must prepare together for the reconvergence that has already begun. And so, a procession formed. Aldrin the Wizard, the first warden of Crystalumis, leading the way with Frost Fathom gleaming in his hand. The sprites darted around him in joyful spirals, their bells creating a melody that seemed to celebrate this moment of revelation. The frost elk followed with their graceful, gliding movement, and behind them came others who had joined along the way. More ice foxes, a family of snow bears with their crystalline fur shimmering in the perpetual twilight, even a few of the rarely seen crystal ravens, their wings catching the light as they circled overhead. Music. As they traveled, Aldrin felt a deepening connection to the land beneath his feet, to the very essence of Crystalia itself. This had always been present, of course. His centuries as wizard of the realm had established bonds of profound intimacy with its rhythms and patterns. But now, with his identity as First Warden consciously reclaimed, that connection amplified, becoming more reciprocal, more intentional. He could sense the subtle changes already beginning throughout Crystalia, the magical currents strengthening in some areas, shifting course in others, preparing the realm for its reunion with Lumeria. These changes were not chaotic, but purposeful, following ancient patterns established before the Sundering, patterns designed to ensure a harmonious rather than destructive reconnection. As First Warden, his role would be to guide this process, to help maintain the delicate balance between preservation and transformation. Crystalia would not simply be absorbed into Lumeria, nor would Lumeria be subsumed by Crystalia. Rather, both would gradually, gracefully evolve toward their original unified state. Crystalumis reborn, yet honoring the unique developments that had occurred during the long separation. By the time they reached the Whispering Glacier, the procession had grown considerably. News of Aldrin's return and the revelations about the portal had spread quickly, drawing curious denizens from all corners of the realm. The glacier itself seemed to welcome them, its whispers now forming cohesive melodies that resonated with the chiming of the sprites' bells, creating a natural harmony that uplifted the spirit. The scene before the glacier was one of diverse beauty, beings of all kinds gathered in peace, sharing in this moment of discovery. The ice formations that surrounded the glacier had responded to the gathering, growing new crystalline structures that formed natural seating areas, observation platforms, even what appeared to be acoustic enhancements that would allow Aldrin's voice to carry to all present. Taking his place before this assembly, the First Warden raised Frost Fathom, sending a gentle pulse of blue-white light into the air that quieted the excited murmurs and drew all attention. Then, with clarity and compassion, he began to share the full story, the original glory of Crystalumis, the cosmic cataclysm that had led to the Sundering, the long ages of separate evolution, and now the beginning of reconvergence. He spoke of Lumeria and its wonders, of the beings who dwelt there, of the potential for new relationships, new discoveries, new harmonies as the realms gradually rejoined. He explained the phases of reconnection that would occur, preparing his listeners for the changes they would witness in the coming cycles. Throughout his address, Aldrin emphasized that this transformation, while profound, was natural, part of the cosmic rhythm that governed all existence. He assured the gathered beings that their unique qualities would not be lost, but rather enhanced, their existence enriched by the expanded possibilities that reconvergence would bring. When he had finished speaking, there was a moment of deep silence, not the silence of fear or confusion, but of collective contemplation, of a community absorbing a new understanding of its place in the greater scheme of creation. Then, starting softly but growing in strength, came a sound unlike any Crystalia had heard in eons. A spontaneous harmony of voices, calls, chimes, and tones from every gathered being, blending into what could only be described as the first song of reconvergence. The whispering glacier responded, its own voice joining this celebratory chorus, adding depths and resonances that seemed to reach into the very foundation of the realm. The aurora veil, visible even in the twilight sky above them, pulsed in synchronization with this music, its curtains of light dipping lower, brushing the tops of the crystal formations around the gathering. In this moment of harmony and revelation, Aldrin the Wizard, the first warden of Crystalia, felt a profound sense of rightness, of completion. The path ahead would not be without challenges. Guiding Crystalia through its reconvergence with Lumeria would require all his wisdom, all his patience, all his love for this magical realm and its inhabitants. But looking out at the wondrous diversity of beings before him, united in their openness to this new chapter in their existence, he knew that the journey would be as beautiful as the destination. The hidden portal to other realms, dormant for so long, had awakened not to disruption, but to the possibility of renewed wholeness, of healing a division so ancient that few had even recognized it as a wound. In the days and cycles that followed, more portals began to appear throughout Crystalia, each connecting to a different region of Lumeria, as Aldrin had promised. These openings formed at nexus points, where the magical frequencies of the two realms most closely aligned, creating stable, harmonious connections, rather than disruptive tears in reality. The denizens of both realms approached these new portals with curiosity and respect. Initial exploration, giving way to regular exchanges, sharing of knowledge and experience. The sprites of Crystalia were among the first to venture through, their natural affinity for travel and discovery making them ideal ambassadors. They returned with the tales of Lumeria's wonders and often accompanied by new friends, the light dancers of the crystal forests, beings similar to sprites in some ways, but with their own unique qualities and perspectives. Aldrin himself divided his time between his traditional tower in Crystalia and the Chamber of Convergence in Lumeria, working closely with Ilaria to coordinate the phases of reconvergence. Their collaboration was enhanced by the resonance pendant, allowing instantaneous communication even when physically separated. The wizard's, or warden's, understanding of his own nature continued to deepen as more memories returned. He recalled now his life before becoming first warden, his training in the magical arts of Crystalia, even glimpses of family and friends from that distant time. These memories didn't diminish his attachment to the experiences of his centuries in Crystalia, but rather enriched them, providing context and deeper meaning. Of particular significance was his growing recollection of the other wardens who had taken similar vows during the Sundering. While Aldrin had been assigned to Crystalia and Ilaria had become the keeper of Lumeria, others had taken responsibility for different fragments of the original realm. As the reconvergence progressed, there existed the possibility that these other portions might also begin to reconnect, further expanding the restoration of Crystalia. This possibility added urgency to the work of harmonizing Crystalia and Lumeria, establishing a stable foundation for what could become an even greater reunification. But it also added joy, the prospect of reuniting with colleagues and friends, long separated by cosmic forces beyond anyone's control. Through all these developments, the most remarkable aspect was perhaps the natural ease with which the inhabitants of both realms adapted to the changes. It was as though, at some deep level, they had always known they were part of something larger, something more complete. The reunion wasn't experienced as disruption, but as remembrance, a collective recognition of connections that had always existed beneath the surface of awareness. The whispering glacier continued to sing its ancient songs, now with new harmonies that incorporated the voices of Lumeria. The Aurora Vale, once a boundary, became a bridge, a shared wonder that connected the skies of both realms. The crystal pools showed new visions, glimpses not just of what was or might be, but of what had once been and could be again. Crystalumis in its original glory, a unified realm of magic and harmony. And Aldrin, watching these transformations unfold, felt a profound gratitude for the path that had led him to this moment. His long sojourn as the solitary wizard of Crystalia had not been merely a waiting period, but a necessary preparation, a time of deep connection with a portion of the greater whole that would enable him to guide its expansion with wisdom and care. The portal that had appeared in that valley of crystalline light had indeed been a doorway to other realms, but more importantly, it had been a doorway to greater understanding, to healing, to the restoration of what had been sundered. In crossing that threshold, Aldrin had not simply traveled from one place to another, but had taken the first step on a journey of cosmic significance, the reunification of a world broken by forces beyond control, but healing through the patient, loving guidance of those who had never lost faith in the possibility of wholeness. And as he stood once more at his tower window, gazing out over the ever-changing landscape of Crystalia, now dotted with the shimmering light of portals connecting to Lumeria, the ancient wizard, the first warden of Crystalumis, knew that this was not an ending, but merely the beginning of the most wondrous chapter in the eternal story of the magical Icelands and all who dwelled within them. In the quiet sanctuary of his tower, Aldrin let the peace of the evening envelop him. The familiar walls gleamed with a soft inner light, the ice that formed them resonating with the deepening magical currents of reconvergence. He had returned here after many days of guidance and explanation, of journey and discovery, to simply rest and reflect on all that had transpired. His chamber felt both the same and subtly different. The objects that had kept him company through centuries remained. The ancient books, the crystal globe, the bed with its moonlight blankets, but they seemed more vibrant now, more connected to the greater reality of which they were part. The crystal globe in particular now showed not just the currents of Crystalia, but those of Lumeria as well, the patterns interweaving in increasingly complex and beautiful designs. Aldrin moved to his meditation space at the center of the room, the spiral pattern in the floor, now glowing gently even without his conscious activation. As he settled himself into a comfortable position, he felt the rhythm of his breathing align naturally with a subtle pulse of magic that flowed through both realms. This was a time for integration, of new memories with old, of expanded identity with established self, of greater purpose with familiar joy. The ancient wizard and the first warden were not separate beings, but facets of a single consciousness, now reuniting just as the realms themselves were beginning to reunite. As his meditation deepened, Aldrin became aware of the echo crystal in his pocket, now warm with received energy. Someone was seeking to communicate with him, not urgently, but with a gentle persistence that indicated desired connection rather than emergency. Opening his awareness, he recognized the familiar resonance of Luminara, his faithful sprite companion. Rather than reaching for the crystal physically, He simply extended his consciousness toward it, a skill recovered from his first warden memories. Immediately, Luminara's presence filled his awareness, her thoughts clear and bright. The new portal near the snow sea has stabilized, she reported with excitement. It connects to a region of Lumeria, where crystal flowers grow that sing when touched by light. The frost elk are especially drawn to them. They stand for hours listening to the melodies. It's quite beautiful to witness. Aldrin smiled internally at this report. The portal near the snow sea was the fifth to form, each one creating a unique connection between complementary regions of the two realms. That the frost elk had found particular joy in this connection was a lovely development, evidence of the natural affinities that were emerging as reconvergence progressed. "Thank you, Luminara," he responded through the crystal connection. "This harmony is exactly what we hoped for. Are there any challenges arising that require attention?" The sprite's response carried a hint of consideration. "Nothing concerning Ancient Wizard. There is some confusion where the time flows differently between the connected regions. Lumerian visitors finding our day length disorienting, and similar adjustments for those from Crystalia visiting Lumeria. But these seem to be minor adaptations that resolve with experience." This too was expected. Time had flowed at slightly different rates in the sundered realms, one of many subtle divergences that had occurred during the long separation. As reconvergence progressed, these differences would gradually harmonize. But in the meantime, awareness and patience were necessary. Continue to monitor and offer guidance where needed, Aldrin instructed gently. Remember that confusion is not the same as distress. Sometimes the most wondrous discoveries come from moments of disorientation. He felt Luminara's agreement and her departure from the connection, the sprite returning to her self-appointed role as observer and guide for those exploring the new connections between the realms. Her dedication touched him deeply, evidence of how the beings of Crystalia were not merely accepting the changes, but actively participating in facilitating them. Returning to his meditative state, Aldrin expanded his awareness even further, connecting now with the deeper layers of Crystalia itself. He could sense the deep swimmers far below, those mysterious entities that dwelled within the ice rather than upon it. They too were responding to the reconvergence, their movements creating new patterns in the deepest layers of the realm, patterns that resonated with the structure of Crystalumis as it had been before the sundering. This was a promising sign. These ancient beings had existed before the cataclysm and carried within them memories even older than Aldrin's own. Their participation in the harmonization process would help ensure the stability of the foundations as the realms continued to merge. Shifting his focus upward, the wizard extended his awareness to the Aurora Veil, that curtain of light that had long marked the upper boundary of Crystalia. Once a separation, it now served as a connection, its dancing lights forming bridges between the skies of both realms. Through these auroral bridges traveled beings that had not been seen in Crystalia for eons. The star sprites, tiny points of conscious light that had been primarily confined to Lumeria during the separation, but now returned to dance once more in Crystalia's twilight sky. The wonder of these reunions, these re-emergences of ancient connections, filled Aldrin with profound joy. Yet within this joy was a bittersweet awareness. Each reconnection emphasized how much had been lost in the sundering, how much had been missing from the experience of all beings in both realms. during the long separation. This led him to consider, again, what Ilaria had shared about the other keepers of Lumeria, how they had faded over the millennia of isolation. Unlike Crystalia, which had maintained a relative stability during the separation, Lumeria had suffered more severely from the sundering, requiring greater sacrifice from its guardians to preserve its essential nature. The thought of these lost keepers brought a moment of solemnity to Aldrin's meditation. They had been his colleagues, his fellow guardians of Crystalumis, and their absence was a reminder of the true cost of the cosmic cataclysm that had divided their realm. Yet even in this reflection was a seed of hope. Perhaps the reconvergence might enable some form of restoration, some acknowledgement or memorial that would honor their sacrifice. Gradually, Aldrin brought his meditation to a close, returning his awareness fully to his physical presence in the tower. The experience had left him both energized and peaceful, more fully integrated in his dual identity as wizard and warden, more deeply connected to the processes unfolding throughout the realms. Rising fluidly to his feet, he moved to the window once more, gazing out over the twilight landscape of Crystalia. From this vantage point, he could see two of the portals that had formed, shimmering doorways in the fabric of reality that now stood open, allowing free passage between the once separated halves of Crystalumis. Near the closest portal, a group of frost elk had gathered, their crystalline antlers catching the light. Among them moved several beings from Lumeria, the light dancers that Luminara had mentioned, their forms similar to flames made solid, graceful, and radiant. The two species seemed to be engaged in some form of shared activity, perhaps a communication or exchange unique to their natures. Further away, near the edge of the glimmer plain, Aldrin could see a new formation taking shape, a structure of ice and crystal rising naturally from the landscape, yet with a symmetry and purpose that suggested conscious design rather than random growth. This was another sign of the progressing reconvergence, the environment itself beginning to recreate structures that had existed in Crystalumis, remembered in the very essence of the land. Watching these developments, Aldrin felt a deep contentment. The path ahead was clear, even if the details of each step remained to be discovered. The healing of Crystalumis had begun in earnest, the long-separated halves of the realm finding their way back to wholeness, guided by those who had maintained faith in this possibility through eons of waiting. And within this greater healing, Aldrin recognized his own personal restoration, the recovery of memories and purpose that had been necessarily suppressed during the long separation. He was becoming whole again, just as the realm itself was becoming whole, the two processes intertwined and interdependent. With this understanding, the ancient wizard, the first warden of Crystalumis, prepared for the next phase of guidance and discovery. There would be more portals forming, more connections to establish, more harmonizations to facilitate. The work would continue for what might be centuries of ordinary reckoning, but in the elastic time of these magical realms, it would unfold in its perfect rhythm, neither rushed nor delayed, but flowing naturally toward completion. And throughout this process, the denizens of both realms would continue to explore, to discover, to create new relationships and new understandings. The reunion of Crystalia and Lumeria was not merely a physical reconnection, but a rejoining of communities, of knowledge traditions, of magical practices that had evolved separately but complementarily during the long division. This thought brought a smile to Aldrin's face as he turned from the window to prepare for a journey. Tomorrow he would visit the Whispering Glacier again, to listen to its evolving songs and to share the latest developments with those who gathered there regularly now, eager for news of the ongoing reconvergence. The glacier had become a natural hub for communication and celebration, its ancient voice now singing not just of what had been or what might be, but of what was actively unfolding. The restoration of Crystalia, the return of wholeness to a realm long divided in its songs, both lament for what had been lost and joy for what was being regained, a perfect expression of the complex emotions that accompanied this time of transformation. As night deepened in Crystalia, or what passed for night in this realm of eternal twilight, Aldrin moved to his simple bed, settling beneath the blankets woven from captured moonlight. Sleep came easily, carrying him into dreams that were neither purely memory nor purely imagination, but a blending of both, a continued integration of his expanding self. In these dreams, he walked the halls of Crystalia as it had been before, the Sundering, a realm of such beauty and harmony that even the most wondrous aspects of Crystalia and Lumeria were mere shadows in comparison. He conversed with colleagues long separated by cosmic forces, shared knowledge with students eager to understand the deeper nature of reality, participated in rituals of celebration and renewal that had been central to the culture of their unified home. These were not mere fantasies, but reconnections with actual experiences, recovered fragments of a life that had been temporarily set aside, but never truly lost. And within these dreams was wisdom that would serve him in the waking world, insights and understanding that would guide his facilitation of the very reunion his dreaming self was experiencing as already complete. This was the gift of remembrance, the blessing of restoration that came with the reconvergence, not just for Aldrin, but for all beings of both realms. In different ways, at different rates, with different degrees of consciousness, all were recovering aspects of themselves that had been dormant during the long separation. And in this shared journey of remembering and becoming, the ancient wizard, the first warden of Crystalia, found his greatest joy, not in personal power or authority, but in witnessing the flourishing of all around him, the blossoming of possibilities, long dormant, but never extinguished. This was the true meaning of the hidden portal to other realms, not merely a connection between separate places, but a doorway to expanded being, to greater understanding, to the joy of wholeness restored. In crossing that threshold, Aldrin had not simply traveled from one location to another, but had taken the first step on a journey of cosmic healing, a journey that would continue until Crystalia stood once more in its full glory, a unified realm of magic and wonder. As the ancient wizard drifted deeper into sleep, the light within his tower dimmed to a gentle glow, mirroring the restful state of its occupant. Outside, the landscape of Crystalia continued its slow, beautiful transformation. Ice formations shifting infinitesimally, magical currents adjusting their flow, all part of the great harmony of reconvergence. And throughout the realm, other beings also rested or went about their activities, each according to their nature, each connected to the unfolding miracle in their own way. The sprites darted between the portals, sharing news and observations. The frost elk grazed on crystal berries that now grew more abundantly, enriched by the blending magics of both realms. the deep swimmers continued their mysterious movements far below, maintaining the foundations of what was and what would be again. All was well in the magical Icelands in this time of restoration and renewal. The hidden portal had fulfilled its purpose, not as an ending, but as a beginning, the first step on a journey back to wholeness. And in this journey, all who dwelled in Crystalia and Lumeria would find not the loss of what they had known, but its enhancement, its completion in the reunified glory of Crystallumus, in the soft quiet of his tower, surrounded by the gentle magics of the realm he had guarded for so long. Aldrin the Wizard, the first warden of Crystallumus, rested peacefully, knowing that the greatest adventure of his long existence was not ending, but truly just beginning. The final journey back to wholeness had commenced, and it was more beautiful, more profound, more filled with wonder than even he, with all his centuries of wisdom, could have imagined. And in this knowledge was perfect peace, perfect acceptance, perfect readiness for all that was yet to come. Aldrin settles deeper into rest now, his breathing slow and steady, his mind at ease with all that has transpired and all that will unfold. The ancient wizard, the first warden of Crystallumus, has completed the first circle of discovery, of remembrance, of reunion, and in this completion is the seed of new beginnings, new explorations, new harmonies yet to be experienced. As he rests, the magical currents of Crystalia flow around and through him, carrying remnants of the day's experiences, the wonder of new portals opening, the joy of beings from different realms, meeting for the first time in eons, the deep satisfaction of witnessing the healing of what had been broken. These currents bring with them the essence of the crystal forests of Lumeria, their unique scents and resonances now beginning to blend with the familiar sweetness of Crystalia's air. They carry echoes of conversations between beings who had been separated since before their specific forms had evolved, finding common ground in their shared connection to the original unified realm. The scent of crystal berries mingles with the aroma of light flowers. The sound of ice fox calls harmonizes with the chiming of Lumerian crystal bells. The sensation of snow beneath one's feet complements the feeling of walking on pathways of solidified light. All the sensory experiences of both realms begin to create a new whole, greater than the sum of its parts, a symphony of perception that enriches rather than confuses. Aldrin's dreams reflect this blending, this harmonization,